Cup of Joe with Grandpa Dez. Hey, Lisa, how you doing?
Hey, how are you? I'm good, thank you.
I'm excellent. Wow, you look as good in your picture as you did in the slate. So I don't know. That must have been a recent picture.
Oh yeah, it's probably about a year ago, I think.
Yeah. See, I look like an old man here, and I always put up a
Oh,
good picture in the thing. So,
well,
but
you
I am
are
an
a
old man.
two-time grandpa.
I am.
I
So
can't
I'm
believe
proud
that.
of it. So I figured now is the time to let the white out, and yeah. So Lisa, I don't know how many other people know who you are, but I first was made aware of you when you co-hosted the Brian and Vinny show on the F4W network.
I
I thought
did.
you
Yeah,
made a great accounting of yourself on there,
thank you.
and we learned a lot about you. And I made me more interested in getting to know you. And we got to meet each other in Vegas,
We
and
did. Yeah, that
and
was
I
fun.
met your boyfriend, whose name I
Yes,
already forgot. Is it Josh?
it's Jake.
Jake. Hey, I was close. I had the right letter. He's a cool guy. That doesn't talk a lot, but
Oh God,
I
he does. It's
oh
just
just
he's
not with
just
feet.
he's not a wrestling fan.
Okay.
So he likes wrestling. He started watching it. It's a typical thing. He met a
Yeah.
girl and she likes wrestling, so he's kind of got to like watch it. It's that simple. And so we go to wrestling shows in the UK, and Double or Nothing, Rampage, Dynamite, that was his first
Yeah.
really big shows. And it's the typical thing that whenever we go to a show, everybody assumes he's the fan and he's the one that they all that talk to him. And then he's always saying, look, just talk to my girlfriend, I don't know what you're talking about. So they'll ask him some like bizarre question about New Japan or something, and he's just like, I just don't know. Just ask her.
We had a few of those people like you at the weekend there. I mean, met Lindsay with her boyfriend Robert. Now they're both pretty
Yeah.
big fans, but Lindsay I
Mhm.
think was maybe a bigger fan than Robert.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then there's you, and I feel like Becky.
It's Becky,
Yeah,
from Sheffield. Yeah,
yeah.
who
A
I've
lot of
kind of
UK, a lot of UK folks.
yeah, yeah, that's been cool actually meeting
Yeah,
those guys and now getting to know people. It's been quite fun.
even Steve, an expat for you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been that was like almost the best part of the weekend, although
yeah.
obviously, AW that was fab, but kind of meeting everybody was the more fun side of it, I think.
One of my most fun times of the weekend was the lunch that we had at Mandalay before the Fan Fest.
Oh
I think
yes,
you
at
were there,
House of
right?
Blues, I was, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, with Becky and Steve, and
Mhm.
was it just the four of us? Maybe.
Adine was there, I think.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, he popped in and out. Yeah,
He came,
but
yeah, came on.
yeah, but I felt like I was the only one that didn't have an accent, or maybe I'm the only one that did have an accent,
Exactly.
depending on your
Exactly.
perspective. But
Yeah,
we got to
exactly.
see a lot of AW wrestlers wandering through
We
the
did, yeah, that
casino.
was
Yeah,
kind of interesting. It was like a who's who because
yeah,
I wasn't staying in Mandalay. I was staying down at Park because I don't
right.
smoke, so I wanted to stay in a non-smoking hotel.
Yeah, well, and
And yeah, and so I hadn't seen anybody, so it was quite interesting just sitting there and having lunch and just kind of it's the curiosity factor, isn't it, of seeing people wander past in their
yeah.
day-to-day outfits and their day-to-day clothes. And it was kind of cool to see. It made you feel like, oh yeah, this is all going on today, and it was kind of
I
fun.
think we just missed MJF too because he was there. I heard.
He was gambling when he should have been
Yeah.
doing his meet and greet, apparently.
Yep. Yeah, we won't go.
Allegedly.
Yeah. But that would have been fun, and then we would have heard like about what happened after, and we'd be like, oh my
Well,
goodness,
it
we
was
saw him.
it was kind of cool being there when all
Yeah.
that was kicking off, though. It was kind of fun.
Were you at the I can't remember if you were at the dinner we had at the steakhouse.
I didn't go to the
Okay.
steakhouse, no, because there was some AEW do this heels
Right.
women's
Oh yeah,
club.
you told me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had their heels party that
Yeah.
night, so I went along to that instead, which was brilliant, great fun.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because that's when we had that's when the news was breaking about MJF, and you could just, and I'm sure you've heard because you probably listened to some of the podcasts and people talking about it, but you just kind of saw the wheels in motion. Like
Yeah.
Dave Meltzer was there, Brian Alvarez, Andrew Zarian, and everyone's on their phones and they're texting and they're getting all this information coming at us fast and furious, and all of us quote unquote marks are just trying to decipher what's going on,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I think nobody had any better idea than anybody else.
I think at the sweet party that later that night,
Yeah.
because there was one point where I was out on the balcony and I'd been talking to Vinny, and then I was talking to Brian, and texts were coming in, and I was being shown some stuff on phones by certain people who will remain nameless. And it was just kind of really interesting. I mean, because obviously, I mean, I mentioned briefly on the Brian and Vinny show, I worked in wrestling for a few years, and I'd not anything like AEW's level. It was like a UK indie, but we had our fair shares of things going on, and it was reminiscent of that kind of buzz where everything's happening, and you know, the boys are being worked, and it's kind of something fun about that. But yeah, don't work the boys. It's a really bad idea.
Well, that's the thing. Like I like when it first came down, like the first thing we heard was about MJF no showing the meet and greet. And then, you know, we were there, and there was a couple of wrestlers at the table with us. And so they heard us talking, and then this one wrestler, female wrestler, kind of piped up and said, "It's a work." And we're like, I'm like, well, I don't think it's a work, because it makes no sense if it's a work. Like, why would MJF no show a fan fest and that you're somehow working the fans? Like, you don't work your paying customers like that. You know, there's no upside. And she's like, it's a work. It's a work. And she just wouldn't, you know, listen to anything else. And you don't get it. You're not in the business. You don't know. And I'm like, I know a little bit more than you think I do, but you know, I'm not, you know, and then now like I feel stupid because maybe it was a work, but if it was dumb.
I mean, my absolute first impression on it was a work.
Okay. And you've been in the business, so
I mean, that was my impression. It was a work. My impression hasn't changed. I'm not. It's really hard to say, because it's not outside the realms of possibility that it's not a work, and it's all real. I think it probably started in reality. He probably does feel as though he deserves more. I don't think there's any wrestler on this planet that doesn't think he deserves more, to be at the top of the card, to or she, you know, this is not a gendered thing, to be in a higher place, you know, to be doing more. Everybody, why would you go into wrestling if you don't want to be the guy at the top of the card or the girl at the top of the card? You just don't.
Correct.
So I think there's probably a lot of truth in it, but I don't know. If it's not a work, putting him on with a live mic on Dynamite to slate the company and slate Tony Khan is the most stupid idea in the history of stupid ideas.
Well, I mean, okay, so that part of it, I mean, I clearly has to be a work. I mean, there, you know, there's no way you're putting the guy on live TV with a mic. And even the pay-per-view, obviously, Wardlow squashing him, all that, even the no showing, you know, and threatening to fly away and all that, even all that I could see as being, you know, kind of an elaborate work to build up interest in the pay-per-view. The no showing the fan fest is the one that I can't wrap my head around, the company deciding, hey, let's do this, because the heat is not on the wrestler. The heat is on the company. Because if you're a fan of MJF and you paid money to see MJF, and there's people that paid the $55 entry fee to get into the fan fest specifically to see MJF. So yeah, they refunded your money if you paid for the MJF meet and greet, but I don't know if you got your $55 back. So, you know, you're going to be mad at AEW. You're not going to be mad at MJF because you're a fan of MJF. And you agree with him that he should get more money. So, you know, in that sense, I do think that part of it was MJF doing a power play. And then, you know, and then Tony Khan got with him and, you know, okay, let's try to work this out because, you know, we got a big match here and here's what I have in mind for you. And let's do something like Brian Pillman. Let's do this. Let's do that. You know, we're going to give you a live mic on Wednesday and you're going to go nuts. And then you're going to be off TV for a while. I think that's stupid. But I mean, I do think that that's what they're doing. I just don't. It's
killed Wardlow at the moment, and Wardlow's great, but it's killed his momentum. It's smart, actually. It's smart. So having been around people a bit like MJF, it's very smart, because what you've done, the momentum on that whole MJF Wardlow feud going into Double or Nothing was on Wardlow. Wardlow was the one that was trending. Wardlow was the one they were chanting. Wardlow was the one people were talking about. Yes, MJF is doing a fantastic job. He's a top heel, you know, but you could argue part of the top heel's job is to get the faces over. I mean, that's kind of the whole job actually of the top heel is to get the faces over. So he was doing his job, but what he did really expertly, and whether or not this was what he wanted to do, but this is what has happened. He expertly changed that momentum and he put it back on himself. And that's really smart. If that's a deliberate thing, that's smart. If it's not a deliberate thing, then you've got to look at Tony and his booking. And I hate to say that because actually a lot of Tony's booking is really good. But there's something about this one that's not, it's really weird, isn't it?
Unless like he doesn't want to push Wardlow at that level, and that's why he did this. I mean, that's very unlike him, because he tends to listen to the fans, and if they're behind somebody, he gets behind them in the booking. And me personally, as a fan, leading up to that MJF match, like, it hit me about 2 weeks before the pay-per-view, this guy's a future world champion. And I never thought that before. But that's how hot he was. And now he's like, if he was out of the company in 3 months, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, that's how far his stock has fallen. Like, I don't think he's gonna be out of the company in 3 months. Like, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, like, that seems to be like he's at a level from feuding with the top heel in the company to feuding with a preliminary manager.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
I mean, it's bizarre. And then your top heel is gone. Your top babyface is gone. Your second maybe top babyface is gone. Like, it's they got some stuff to deal with right now. But a lot of it's beyond their control. So
and then exactly. And injuries happen, and stuff happens. Injuries happen. Just don't work the boys. Don't work. Just don't. It's always it fosters mistrust in your locker room.
Exactly. And with the fans. Fans. Because I think there's a unique relationship that AEW and Tony Khan have built up with the fans. They're almost treating them like part of the company. And so if you working the boys, you're working them. I mean, you're always working the fans on some level, but this is a different kind of level. And I think that part of what has made AEW so successful is the trust that they have. They don't even have to advertise CM Punk, and the fans know he's going to be there. And Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, like, they can just throw out these hints. And if you all of a sudden start working the boys, now all of a sudden the fans are not going to trust you. And now to the point where you have Jay White out there last week saying, I'm not defending against Adam Cole. I'm not defending against Hangman. And everyone assumes, oh, it's going to be a three-way. That's not AEW. AEW doesn't tell you you're not going to do something and then do it. But now fans are thinking that way because they're being worked.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
And that, I mean, that trust is priceless, actually. That's something you can't buy. You can't really, you earn that. And I think thinking back to when AEW first started and thinking back to what was going on in the industry, and there was all of these people pulling all sorts of shenanigans left, right, and center, as there has always been in wrestling. I mean, I'm old enough to have watched wrestling in the 70s in the UK with, Big Daddy Mick McManus, all of that stuff.
Not. You're
yes,
28.
I am.
You're 28.
Yeah. And it was a carny industry, and it's always been a carny industry. And certainly, I think in the late 90s when I started working, there was a push to try and take it out of that carny industry, certainly in the UK, and to make it something a bit more professional, established, to get TV, and not just not just World of Sport, but not World of Sport Saturday afternoon, like TV, fighting channels, radio coverage, and to treat it in the way that I think they felt it should be respected, as an entertainment, as a sport, in inverted commas, as an entertainment. But it still has that running through it. And I think when AEW started, people saw a company that maybe, you've got Tony Khan, he's respected, obviously, Fulham in the UK, Jaguars in America, he's a respected guy. And you think, here's something different. Here's someone, and also, he is different. He is a different person to a lot of those promoters out there. I mean, promoters have been more or less, universally white men of a certain age. Tony Khan's different. He's a younger guy, he's not white. He comes from a different cultural background. Here's somebody who's doing things slightly differently.
He's a fan. And I think that makes, he started as a fan. He's a fan with money. He's doing what probably 90% of the fans out there would want to do if they were able to do it. And he's got the money to do it.
But he's also got the business acumen to do it. And
absolutely.
That was the difference. And I think, like when the FWA started in the UK in the late 90s, early noughties, the people who were involved, you know, like my late husband was a guy called Ellis Cabrera, who was a promoter in the UK in the 90s noughties. And he was
Aughties. I love that. I've never heard that.
noughties.
I love that.
Have you not?
No, I love that.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
And he was a TV and film producer. That was
Okay.
his whole job. So he was a wrestling fan, but he came at it differently because he came at it from a TV and film perspective. So for him, as important as, you know, it was obviously important to put on good shows, but it was important that it looked good, that it was lit good, that you had music for each wrestler, that it could be filmed well, it could be edited, that at the back then VHSs and DVDs could be sold. I mean, it began with VHSs, became DVDs. You know, the company had a website back when most people didn't have websites, where we're still, you know, we're all still talking on bulletin boards. All of that kind of was the way we were moving the industry on back in the 90s, noughties, as you say, and changing it from something that was kind of carny, where, to be honest, we were still talking backstage in carny language. You know, I can still, like, I mean, I haven't spoken in carny language for years, but I was taught by the boys how to speak when, you know, it was taught to me how to speak when fans were around, and what to say and what to do, and how to talk in this strange little Vixnay language and all of this stuff. And that was taught to me as an impressionable 20-something coming into the industry.
So you were doing that in the 90s and the aughties. And that is a kind of a very interesting time in the UK wrestling scene, because I think, like, and again, from an outsider's perspective, it feels like it was really hot in the 70s and the 80s. And then what happened is the WWF kind of took over, and like it did everywhere else. And so you had like the WWF people come in and they do like a big show, but it feels like the UK indie scene was almost non-existent. Or if it was maybe underground, like it didn't have a very big presence on TV, but it started to come around in the early, you know, I'll say, I'm just going to say it because it feels weird for me. I like it so much better when you say it. So early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I've even watched some of that stuff. I wish I could remember the name of the company that I watched. And now maybe this might have been the later part of the decade already, but a lot of the guys that ended up in NXT UK were coming up in that scene. Like I remember like El Ligero, Zach Gibson.
I mean, this would be much later, I think.
Okay,
was they're probably slightly younger, so
okay.
probably, yeah. I think we were more, I mean, the age of the guys. So when I was working, so Punk had been in the industry a couple of years,
right?
AJ was just starting out.
Yeah, because you did ring announcing for an ROH show in the UK, right? You said
it was an ROH versus FWA show. So yeah, I ring announced for that. I mean, we did a lot of shows with Ring of Honor talent. We had a working agreement with them, so our talent went over to them. They came over to us. So we had a lot of shows. I mean, you know, looking back on it, the Who's Who was amazing of people that we worked with. We worked with some of the ECW talent as well. It was a good time to be in wrestling in the UK. But yeah, you're right. We'd had this kind of era of these, you know, of the big sort of promotions where they were going around the, you know, the big guild halls, as it is in the UK, and doing these shows that were on World of Sport. And it was your sort of campy Big Daddy stuff, very divisive figure in UK wrestling, but very mainstream, you know, very, very well known over here. He was as well known to us as Hulk Hogan was to you guys in the US. And then it kind of died off when it went off of World of Sport. But that was like the wrestling that your grandparents watched. I mean, I was taken to the matches by my granny, who would sort of sit there and scream and throw things at the ring, throw popcorn, and you know, it
was bad though, right? Like
it was. Some of it was good, some of it was really terrible. I mean, you know,
like the Big Daddy stuff. From what
the Big Daddy stuff was awful. I mean, you know, there was some good. Mick McManus was a good wrestler. You know, Johnny Saint,
right?
Kendo, you know, Drew McDonald. They were great wrestlers.
Brookside, Regal.
Brookside, latterly Brookside, because he kind of crossed over into the newer stuff as well. And then it kind of died a death. And obviously the American stuff became very popular. Sky Television launched in the UK, and we started to get WWE. We had WWF a little bit on World of Sport, like the odd match, and then it kind of took off, and we had WWF, now E, on Sky Television, and then it kind of latterly it went on Channel 4 for a while, and then Channel 4 got a bit twitchy about it, so it went back onto Sky. And then we kind of did have a scene, but it was still stuck in the past a little bit. It was still doing the more traditional English kind of style of wrestling. So we had All Star Promotions, who was, was fantastic promoters running all over the country, and I believe worked a lot with Bryan Danielson. And I believe that was his introduction to the UK, as he was coming over and working. I think people like Regal and that worked for them as well. And then a company called Hammerlock opened up, and they were trying to bridge the gap, I think, between the older style and the newer style, but still with their foot in the older style. And then the FWA kind of came along, and they really wanted to disrupt and just wanted to do the new style and wanted to be whizzy bangy. And, we had pyro and we had video screens, and we wanted to bring that American feel to the shows, but still be British, but bring an American theme over to the shows. And I think that was the real start of that kind of independent feeling to UK wrestling. And then it grew and it's taken off. And
so that'd be like 2005-ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of left 2005, 2006. So,
all right.
And
so before like even like ICW became a thing, because to me, like a lot of the guys you see now and girls, kind of made a run through ICW, of the UK version of ECW.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure when they launched, if they were running when we were running latterly. I mean, I'm trying to think where.
Because I was getting that. They used to air it here on the Fight Network. And so we'd get that. And then we'd also get, again, there was I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was this very uniquely British show that had some of the same wrestlers as ICW, but it was strictly wrestling. And they presented it in like a season format. So you would have like 10 or 20 episodes, and then they would take a break. And then you would be off for like 3 or 4 months, and and then you'd be back.
That's why I'm holding my mic, because I'm going to do that.
My stand is just acting nuts on me today.
Oh, I gave up with mine. It was getting on my nerves. So
I usually don't even like have to do anything with it, but lately it's been nuts. So I love that show, and I wish I could remember the name of the guy who, I think he was the promoter and he was also the announcer. I want to say Michael Shane. Is that a guy?
I don't know the name.
I know there was a TNA wrestler.
Not that guy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's not him.
Yeah, I can't remember. But anyways, I've always been kind of fascinated, because again, it seemed to, like, there was this renaissance in around 2005, somewhere in the 2005-2010 era, and by like the early 2010s, I mean, it was thriving.
Yeah.
And to the point where, now WWE decides, hey, we need to stop this, and we're going to sign all the top guys, and everyone they didn't sign went to New Japan, and all of a sudden you started from scratch again. But it seems to be coming up again. Like,
it is. And it's interesting. The WWE stuff is interesting. Obviously, there were promotions that refused to go under the WWE umbrella. And it's interesting to see where those guys are, and where the guys who did decide to go under, where they are now. I think there's a lot of promotions here now, and it feels like there's a new one opening every day. And it's not sustainable, and some of those will survive and some of them won't. There are the bigger companies. I mean, Rev Pro are about to have their 10th anniversary weekend in London in August, which I'm really looking forward to, because the thing with their shows, you go to their shows, you're always going to get a really good show. Some promotions you go to, and you're going to get a great show, or it's going to be okay. Rev Pro, you seem to always get like something really.
They're pretty much the big indie, right?
They are the big indie, I think, over here at the moment. Obviously, they're working a lot with New Japan, and that's continued even with the pandemic. They get their guys over on Excursion, which has been great. So we have Shota Umino in the UK for his Excursion, which has been so much fun watching him.
You had what's the name of that big the
with
big
Great
guy?
Khan.
Great Khan, but no, the big guy who people said reminded them of Nakanishi. Did he? I don't know if he went there or Mexico. I can't remember his name. I'm so bad. I'm getting old. He came up at the same time as Umino, but he was like big, huge guy with kind of wild hair.
Oh yes, I know who you mean. He's been on AEW recently.
No.
No, not that guy.
No,
No,
no. I'm
I
gonna have
don't
to
know.
look it up
Yeah,
because
you're gonna have to look him up.
yeah, but yeah, so Umino and yeah, I mean that guy's incredible.
He's
And
great,
then they've
but
got a couple young guys right now that I think have a lot of potential. Fujita and Ui something or other.
yeah.
Not anymore, but yeah, Fujita. I've seen a
Mm.
couple of their matches because usually what I'll do is I'll watch a New Japan show and I'll flick it on and I give up after like an hour. But I always see the young boys. I love those young boy matches.
Yes,
You know,
they're always great.
that's yeah. And
They're
then they
always
get into
great.
like evil, and I'm just now I'm
I know.
done.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, I
Yeah.
was someone who would get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to watch New Japan absolutely regularly. And I don't at the moment. And I'm tending to just go through and pick the matches I want to
Yeah.
watch on New Japan World, which is kind of a shame. And I'm hoping it comes up because there is something about a New Japan show, watching it from start to finish, seeing the young boys matches, you know, there's
That's why
something about that.
I don't like just going and watching matches. Like I like
Mm.
to watch the whole show, like you said. So and I actually just recently canceled my New Japan subscription because first time because Jay White. Like I'm not a fan.
Are you not? No. I like Jay
No.
White.
Yeah, that's I
he's
mean,
great.
you know what? And a lot of people do. And you
Mm.
know, the funny thing is I like him in Impact. I've
Yeah.
even liked him in AEW. I don't like him in New Japan. Like he's go away heat for me.
I just thought his segment, was it Dynamite with Adam Cole, where
was
he came, that was just perfect. That
It was
split
like
screen was perfect.
yeah,
Where
and
Cole was just
and in Impact, like I mean, I don't know if you
yeah.
watch Impact, but I watch every week, and he's great on there.
Mm,
He's not like the focus, so I think for me that's actually a big plus that he's
mm,
not like the guy that the promotion revolves around, like kind of like a Jeff Jarrett back in the
yeah,
day. Like I was a
yeah,
big fan of Jeff Jarrett, but in WWF and even in WCW when he was on the undercard, but then when they started pushing him as the main guy, that's
mm,
when it turned me off. And then even in Impact later, when he was
yeah.
like the guy that the show revolved around, it was like, okay, that turned the channel. Like I'm
Mm,
not interested. But for him on the undercard, like there's I'm not saying you know like everyone is slotted and you can never move up or down or whatever, but I think certain guys thrive in a role where they're not the focus, like the
yeah,
Miz in WWE, you
yeah,
know, like you know, and even in AEW, like there's guys, you know, Dante Martin, like I
yes.
love his matches, but if he was like the world champ, I would probably reject it.
It's difficult with Dante though. He's so young. He hasn't grown
Yeah,
into
yeah.
himself yet. He doesn't know
That's a
who
bad
he is as a
example, but
wrestler yet, does he? I
yeah.
mean, yeah. I'm trying to think of a
Reminds me a lot
better.
of Will, you know, like 5 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think you're right. I think Will's always had that thing about him, though, that you knew he was going to be a star. I
Yeah,
think
and
there is
you're not
something
quite
about
sure
Will.
with Dante, right? Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, Dante, I think with Dante has got skills. You can't, there's no denying what he can do. It's getting the whole package together. It's getting the presentation. I feel like Will, always had something, a spark. And even like the first time kind of seeing him wrestle, it's like, yeah, that guy's going to be like a star. You just knew it. And there's some people you look at and you go, there's a star, that guy's going to be a star. And there's other people, it's like, oh, they could be. They've got the talent. It's just putting it together.
And the desire, you know, and you could see
Yeah.
that in Will Ospreay as well, like right from the start, like that
He
he
works really
wanted to be,
hard.
he wanted to be. And you know, and then there's other guys like like a Zack Sabre Jr. who has the talent, but does he have that it factor, you know, where he's going to be the guy you build a company around? I don't know. He's so good.
I fucking loved Zach. I just love him. I just think he's amazing. I love his interviews because the way he speaks, he puts me in mind of Regal in his interviews. All his like sweetheart, darling. He uses a lot of like British slang. I mean, shout out to Regal.
He's cocky, right?
Trout slapping.
Oh my God. I missed that on the show. And then when I was listening to Brian and Vinny recap it, well, no, because I actually didn't see the show. That's right. Because they haven't even uploaded it yet. But yeah, I mean, when I heard Brian he's like, I can't read this. I can't read this. And then Vinny's like, well, come on, it's this show. You could, no, I can't. And then he like tries to like kind of read it. And he's like, you made the right call.
Yeah. But it's that thing that we British could do. You know, we are very good with our swear words. And I mean, I studied Shakespeare when I studied theatre at university and did a lot of my degree about Shakespeare. And one of the wonderful things about Shakespeare is the amount of swear words in Shakespearean stuff is incredible, but they're all hidden. So, I mean, Tom Hiddleston got Mewling Quim into the Marvel universe. And if you don't know what that means, you should Google it. But it's very rude.
Well, there's, I mean, yeah,
it's
like
wonderful.
if you don't know what's being said,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's and Regal is, and I'm sure Tony probably knows, and he's just nobody else is gonna know.
No one
Go
knows.
ahead.
And it's not a swear word in that it's an old
Right.
English saying.
It's only a swear word if you know it's a swear word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's very interesting. The power, I mean, I'm a writer. The power words are very, very interesting. And I always look at that and think, yes, we designate a word as vile and another word as acceptable. And it's this whole tangent I could go off for hours on about who decides what words are swear words and what words are not, and what words we can use in polite conversation and what words we can't. And it is interesting. But Zach, coming back to your point, Zach is from Essex, so outside London. But yes, he has some very interesting turns of phrase, and I do appreciate that he gets them all into his promos. And I just love him. I just think he's great. He's someone I would like to see in AEW, not permanently because I love him in New Japan, but I think I would like to see what he can do. Obviously, we'll find out what's going to happen.
I think we're going to see him on Wednesday.
I hope so.
Yeah. I personally, and I've kind of been on record as saying this, everyone's talking about, the dream match, Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr., and obviously that match would be incredible. Personally, I don't want to see that match yet. I want to see a tag match or a 6-man with the two factions, and I want to see a couple spots. I want to get my appetite wet. My co-host on the Dynamite show, Jeff Hawkins, put it well. He said, "I want some foreplay before I get my sex."
Yeah.
Like and so yeah, if you go right to it, I mean that's fine. It won't mean as much to me. But at this point, I think you take what you can get, because there's so many matches that they had in mind that for whatever reason couldn't happen. I had a card that I wrote down, and it feels like all those matches were on the way to happening, and then different things happen, and Punk Tanahashi and Hangman and Okada and all these different matches that originally when they announced this show, I'm like, these are my dream matches, and like none of them are happening. So
it feels weird to me that we are doing Forbidden Door when Omega's not healthy, because he is the key to the Forbidden Door. Surely
him and Mox.
Him and Mox, yeah. But I think Omega more so, because Omega was a full-timer in New Japan. Obviously he was responsible. He and the Bucks were responsible for that American Renaissance they had. I think it's a strange one that he's not.
If you had said
he turns up Wednesday, and
if you had said 2 years ago, okay, in 2022 when the pandemic's over, we're going to do a show and it's going to be called Forbidden Door and it's going to be AEW versus New Japan on some level, I think the number one match you would want on that show is Omega and Ibushi.
Yeah.
Either tagging or against each other. Either Golden Lovers against the Young Bucks or Omega and Ibushi against each other. And that's the other one, is we can't get Ibushi on this show. And I've said, I think there's 4 guys in Japan that actually are going to make a difference on US pay-per-view. And they're Tanahashi, Okada, Ibushi, and Naito. And as of right now, only one of those guys is on the show. And so I still think it's going to do very well, because I think, like we talked about earlier, AEW has that trust that they've built up. I don't know what New Japan brings to the table on the US side. But someone explained it to me. Chris Sampson, a very smart dude. If you're watching, Chris, shout out. He said, like, what a lot of people aren't considering is what this show is about in the Japanese market. And so in the Japanese market, AEW is getting exposure that they have never had. So and that's why Lance Archer got a huge pop when he was announced for the G1. Because they're just getting into AEW now. So this is more than just, what the show's going to do on pay-per-view or what the rating for Dynamite's going to be. It's about building a brand worldwide. So absolutely. Yeah, so
and that's, and obviously they've got one eye to that. They're doing this, intercontinental title or whatever it's called, transatlantic,
Atlantic championship.
All Atlantic. That's it.
My God.
I'm not as offended by it as a lot of people.
I'm not offended. I just think it's stupid.
I would. Well, no. I mean, if they choose to bring it to, like, the UK, for example, because I'm here, and defend it on the Indies as a way of like being able to solidify some of those relationships on the indies in the UK. I'm all for it. If they do the same in Europe, if Japan, Japan's nowhere near the Atlantic, but
What do you think
whatever.
of the idea of having the champion only be allowed to defend against someone from a country that they're not from? Do you think that's a little too convoluted? So
It
like
feels
Miro wins and he can only defend against people who aren't from Bulgaria,
it
for
feels like a
instance.
really good way to book yourself into a corner.
Well, I mean, for Miro, it's probably fine because I mean,
Yeah.
there's isn't a whole hell of a lot of Bulgarian wrestlers out there. But yeah, I guess if you had a UK guy win, now all of a sudden you can't do Will Ospreay against Zack Sabre Jr. for instance.
And if you want to take it out, which I would hope they do, otherwise what's the point of having the belt? If you want to take it abroad, then you have to be able to defend it. So if you go to Germany, you want to be able to have 2 German wrestlers on the show defending it, you hope.
Well, or I mean, if it's a traveling guy, like a big name, or relative, like a Pac, for instance, like you could do Pac against,
stuff.
Whoever I'm blanking on the big German wrestlers right now, but the Axel Dieter or something like that. That's the name, right? Did I get that right?
I think so.
Yeah, the guy that used to be in NXT, I think. Okay, so you know what? We're like I told you, we're going to go like 30, and we're already over that. So I don't know if you want to continue on this strain for a few more minutes, or if you want to get into what you brought up yesterday in the Facebook group. Or do you want to just leave that one alone, and we can maybe talk about that some other time?
Stuff with his body. Well, I mean,
you said it. Okay, so I've had a guy I had on this show. Did a rant about Adam Cole, and it was basically what Booker T said, right?
Yeah.
And I just stood there and I kind of laughed and whatever. Like I didn't really challenge him on it. Maybe I should have, because I didn't really agree with them. But I'm not confrontational, and he was actually right here beside me on that show. Jimmy Mack, a good friend of mine I've known for like 20 years, and he's like, he doesn't even have internet, so he was like, yeah, if I'm gonna do your show, I have to come to your house.
So you can't hear us like criticizing him right now.
No, I think he finds Wi-Fi, but he couldn't like do it, because he actually does a podcast. But yeah, so he, and then there's been other people, and I've even got friends, one of my best friends who I've watched wrestling with for 30 years, longer, I guess, probably. He's brought up, like, he's even said, like, he stopped watching NXT when they brought in Adam Cole. Like, certain people have that sense. And so I think, like, if someone thinks that way, you're not going to be able to change their mind. No. But I love, like, what you said, like, you can't, these guys like Adam Cole, and there's been others, but we'll talk about him. Zack Sabre Jr. was another one that they said that about for years.
Yeah.
That they need some muscle, and which is code for you need to get on the juice.
Yeah.
And
even though they'll say it's not, but it's the old adage: if something is too good to be true, it is. If somebody is on the indies and is really, really skinny, and suddenly they turn up elsewhere, and suddenly they're really big and cut, and there's a reason for it. Let's just
Buddy Matthews. I'm looking at you.
Oh, I don't know any names. I'm just saying that,
like,
in terms of, it's not just good nutrition and working out. Yeah. Let's be completely honest. So this is the thing. It's like
genetics have,
not everybody can pack on muscle. Genetically, some people can work out forever and not pack on muscle. That's just a genetic thing. It's fine. Sometimes, I'm someone, if I really, really put my mind to it, I can pack on muscle pretty quickly. That's just my genetics. It's from my mother's side of the family. It's just the way it is. And I don't tend to put weight on, so I can pretty much eat whatever I want. I'm very, very fortunate, and I'm not going to go above a certain size. Whereas other people, you look at a donut and there we go. Well, no, you're but my problem with this Adam Cole thing, if we were sitting, and I put this analogy on the group, but if you and I are sitting watching football and we're with someone, soccer, football, and we're with somebody who knows what they're talking about, and there's some soccer player and he keeps hurting his knee, and they go, well, he needs to strengthen his whatever, his right this or his left that. I'm going to listen to that because that's a reasonable comment. But just to look at someone and go, well, look at his legs, they're too skinny, or look at his body, he needs a bit more muscle, or he's too fat, he needs to slim down. That's not constructive criticism. And people are using this as, well, it's a constructive criticism. No, it's not. Booker T said this kid needs to put muscle on. That's not constructive criticism. Well, why? Oh, because he'll get less injured. But how? Muscle people get injured all the time. look at, and if you're really big, you also risk other injuries.
And honestly, if your body is not used to having that kind of muscle, you're probably more susceptible to injury.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, we don't know, but this, I mean, there's a bigger thing here. We don't know, and we shouldn't know. We have no right to know what Cole's health situation is. We don't know if he's carrying injuries. We don't know what his doctors told him. We don't know anything. To look at him, he's not overweight. He works well. I'm enjoying the running by the cat, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I'm surprised none of my three have done a running yet.
Oh, he does it all the time. His name's Smokey.
We don't know this, and we shouldn't know it, and it's not for us to comment. And it's just this culture of feeling free to comment on other people's bodies. It's not okay. People say, well, this is cosmetic business. Okay, but it's still not okay, and we should be better than this, and we should be past it. And I saw Renee Paquette was talking about this today on her Twitter feed, and I mean, she ended it with the phrase "go piss up a rope," which I think I should use more often because
she's on your side, I assume.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it is that thing of, it's none of our business, and we should be past this. And you can dress it up as cosmetics, concern, injuries, talking about this, talking about that. Ultimately, you're commenting on someone's body, and that's not okay.
No, I will say, okay, two things I want to add to this. One thing that I just reminded me of, and I don't know why I hadn't remembered this before, but I have a friend who is a trainer, and he's worked with a lot of wrestlers. And actually, there was a time, it was in Adam Cole's ROH run, and I think it might have been either between championships or right before he won the first one, where he had a pretty serious injury and he was out for a while. And then when he came back, he was having a really hard time getting into shape, and he ended up dropping some weight. And for him, that's what worked. Now he got really like lean, but it worked for him in the ring. Like without that extra bulk, he was actually better in the ring, and he felt more comfortable and all that. So I think for him, that's what he wanted. Now I can honestly say that I've never once, and I've watched Adam Cole probably almost his whole career, I've never once looked at him and thought his arms are too small, his legs are too small. Like I've never thought. The only thing I've thought sometimes, and it's only when he's in there with certain people, is he's kind of short. Like where, like, and so that's the only time. But it's not like I don't believe that he can, because he's such a good wrestler, and Bryan Danielson has always been the smallest guy or the shortest guy. Absolutely. Owen Hart is my all-time favorite wrestler, and I mean, you look at him now and he's actually bigger than most of the guys now, but back then he was one of the smaller ones. So, and I equate Adam Cole to like a Shawn Michaels back in the day, who, according to a normal person, was jacked, but in the land of the giants, he looked tiny. Now, Adam Cole, on the other hand, I mean, if he would have walked past us at the casino, we'd have probably looked and, oh wow, he's a little bit smaller than I would have thought. But it never bothers me when I'm watching it on TV. But I think Booker T grew up in that industry where, like, oh, if you don't turn heads at the airport, you're not a star. Yeah. And it's changed. I mean, Adam Cole's a star.
He is, absolutely. And he has presence. I went to the Fan Fest. I was only at the Fan Fest for about an hour, but I did catch that BTE belt thing they did on stage, which was
just blackjack or something.
So blackjack. they did rock, paper, scissors, and some other game that was something to do with dice. That, as a British person, I had no idea what they were doing. But just looking at him there, because I've not seen him live, I don't think, before. I don't think I've ever seen Adam Cole wrestle. I mean, I've seen him sort of on a show, but I think I've seen him like up close. He just looked like a star. There's something about him. His face, he has a very chiseled face. He has that gleam over him that some people have that just sets him slightly aside. He's a star. That guy's a star. And it's a weird thing, but we know much more now than we ever did 10, 15, 20 years ago about eating disorders, about steroids, which are still a big problem.
Mental
health. Steroids are still a really big problem in the industry. And I hate when people go, well, people don't do that anymore. No, they do. They really do. And to then bring up these conversation points, it's irresponsible. Someone like Booker T should know better, actually. He's in a position of power.
I'm not surprised.
He should know better. I know, and I'm not surprised.
And he's a trainer.
I'm disappointed.
And he's a trainer and a good one. So a lot of the people that are coming up in the industry now are being trained by him. So they're coming in with that mindset.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, and you hear it like all the time. Like, I'm amazed at, like, you know, every time I'll watch AW Dark or something, and they'll be like, oh, came up in Booker T's school.
Mm,
You watch NXT and Level Up,
yeah.
and there's like, you know, all these new people that are
Mm,
coming up in through their school, and that's what they're being taught.
mm.
And you're right, like that's dangerous.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. And I would be the first person to say to anybody, it's great to go to the gym. And it is. It's great to have a
yeah.
good level of physical fitness. I think that's fantastic. I was in the gym at
Well,
7 a.m. this morning cursing the world, but I was there. You know, it's a great thing to do. And as you age as well, going to the gym is the best thing you can do for your body. But you need to have that. And someone did ask me the other day for some advice for someone who wanted to get into wrestling. And my advice to them was
oh yeah.
to start with physical fitness, to go to the gym, to work up, you know, yoga, stretch, especially stretching, weights, and to get your physical fitness to the peak that it can be. But that doesn't always equate to what your body necessarily looks like.
Mhm.
And I think, I mean, there's, you know, there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down about weight and you know, obviously being obese and there obviously being an issue and, you know, blowing up in the ring, and that's a completely separate thing. And again, that's something between your doctor and yourself and your trainer and yourself. But I think to go for someone who looks, to me, appears to be mostly pretty healthy. Yeah, he's carrying a knock at the moment. So he's half the AEW roster and half the WWE roster, if we're really honest. And doesn't blow up in the ring and can do these 20, 30-minute fantastic matches without really breaking much of a sweat. I don't.
And over, you know, as
Over.
yeah. I mean, to me, that's the key.
God.
You know, and so and you brought it up, and the funny thing with him is not only, so I think when you talk about him, looking at him and being a star, I think he's got that unique ability to turn it on.
Yeah.
Because I met him, I wouldn't say backstage, but it was at a Invicta FC show, you know, MMA. And he was there with Roderick Strong when he was dating Marina, and it was her first fight. So they were there to see it. And so I met him. I was introduced by his real name. I knew who he was, but and he was just a dude, like, you know, and smaller than me. And like, I was kind of surprised, you know, because I'd seen him on TV, and I was surprised at, you know, again, at how short he was. Not necessarily like, I didn't think, oh man, this is a wimp, I can't believe. But the point is like, he was just a dude. Like, he just sat in the background, didn't say much or anything. But then when you would see him in his element, it's a different guy. Like, he turns it on, and now he's a star. And I think when he does, the reason he's so popular on like the Twitch streams and stuff like that is because people are seeing him as just that guy. So they're seeing this big star, but they're also getting to know the guy behind Adam Cole. You know, I'm blanking on what his real name, Austin something or other. You're seeing Austin and in his element, and then you're getting to know him, and then you're even more behind him when you see him in the ring. So even though he's a heel, he gets those babyface pop because people are into him. You know, they see him and they're like, you know, the old adage, you know, the guy everybody wants to be and the girl everyone wants to be, or the guy every girl wants to be with. And that's him.
It is.
You know?
It is. I mean, true story. So my partner, obviously, Jake, is just starting to watch wrestling, and he didn't have a clue who Adam Cole was when he turned up in AEW, and I was quite excited. I have to say, I'm defending Adam Cole left, right, and center this week. I'm not even. I mean, I think Adam Cole's great, but he wouldn't be in my top 5.
It's what it stands for.
On a personal level, it's what it stands for. But he's great, and I think he's great, and I'm very happy to watch his work. And so I was very excited when he turned up, and so he was on telly a few weeks, and Jake's like, oh, I'm not feeling it. He's just a cocky, arrogant prick. He's a cocky prick. And I'm like, yeah, that's his job. And he's like, oh no, it just seems really awful. So Jake is actually, he works in computers. He works on computer games. He does web design. He does all things related in that area that I don't understand. And he was playing I think it's Elden Ring. It's called Elden Ring. And it was a game that launched on the PS5. It's very, very popular. It looks very hard to me. You know, I tried it and was like, that's too difficult.
I play one game.
I play Dead by Daylight. That's what I play.
All right.
So Jake had been playing that game. So I put Cole's Twitch stream on. Just put it on. So just watch this. Just watch a bit of this. And he completely changed his mind on Cole. He was like, oh,
really?
It's great. I'm like,
Wow.
yes, because he is playing a character, and that's how good he is. That you hated him to the point you wanted to almost turn off the TV. It's almost go away because he pissed you off so much. And now you're seeing the real guy, and now he loves him because he's like, oh, that dude's great. He's so cool.
Well, that's where he can go from getting that babyface pop when he says
Mm.
Adam Cole, baby, to like 2 minutes later, they're booing him and he can't even get a word out because he's got so much heat. Like, that's why he's so good at his job.
Yeah.
So, you know what? We're almost at 50 minutes. So I think we got to wrap this up, but I definitely want to have you on again now. And I almost want to like start like a regular podcast with you. I'm having so much fun talking to you. It's been great getting to know you. And I'm glad you joined. I'm glad you accepted my invitation into the Fight Game Media Group.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm enjoying myself very much.
And hopefully you don't get any untoward pics after this appearance. If you do, forward them my way. I can use a good dick pic.
If anyone, don't send them to me. Send them to me.
Just send them to me at Paul Ace Fontaine on Twitter. My DMs are open. She is at Fun Girl.
Oh, that's my phone ringing.
Oh, was that It's My Life, Bon Jovi?
It's the Pet Shop Boys West End Girls.
Oh my God, I love that song.
I've got a Pet Shop Boys poster behind me actually at the moment.
Oh wow,
so
I was just listening to that yesterday.
Yeah, that's their film they did back in the 80s. So.
Oh yeah, I'm not. All right. Well, okay, we'll wrap it up there. So for Lisa, I've been Grandpa Dez, and this has been Cup of Joe with Grandpa Dez.